The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned marketplace as Maya's bare feet shuffled through the scattered debris. Her stomach cramped with hunger, a familiar companion that had been with her for days. The 18-year-old girl had learned to ignore the stares of the few early vendors who watched her dig through their discarded goods with a mixture of pity and disgust. Maya's fingers trembled as she lifted the heavy lid of another trash barrel, the metal scraping against concrete with a sound that made her wince. Inside, beneath rotting vegetables and soggy cardboard, she spotted half a loaf of bread. Her heart raced as she carefully extracted it, brushing away the mold from one corner. It wasn't much, but it would keep her alive for another day. 3 years had passed since the Great War began, and 3 years since Maya lost everything that mattered. Her parents had been merchants in this very marketplace, selling beautiful hand-woven fabrics that her mother created on their old wooden loom. Their small shop had been her entire world, filled with colorful threads and the gentle sound of her mother humming while she worked. The memory of that terrible night still haunted her dreams. The sound of boots on cobblestones, the shouting, the fire that consumed everything she had ever known. Her parents had hidden her in the cellar beneath their shop, pressing a small bag of coins into her hands and telling her to run when the flames died down. She had waited in that dark space for hours, listening to the sounds of destruction above, never knowing it would be the last time she would see their faces. Maya tucked the bread into her torn dress pocket and continued her search through the marketplace. The other scavengers had already picked through most of the good spots, but she had learned to be thorough. Sometimes the vendors would accidentally drop food, or a customer would leave something behind. She had become an expert at survival, though the constant hunger never got easier to bear. As she approached the last row of trash barrels near the old fountain, Maya noticed something different. A crowd had gathered at the far end of the square, their voices rising in excitement and fear. She had learned to avoid crowds during the war years, as they usually meant trouble, but something about this gathering felt different. Standing on her tiptoes, Maya could see over the heads of the people in front of her. In the center of the crowd stood a man unlike anyone she had ever seen. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his shoulders and scars that marked his weathered face. His clothes were made of leather and metal, and a great sword hung at his side. But it was his eyes that captured her attention, dark and intense, scanning the crowd with the confidence of someone who had commanded respect his entire life. The whispers around her confirmed what she had already suspected. This was KL, the Warchief of the Northern Territories, a man whose reputation had spread across the continent. Some called him a savage, others a hero, but everyone agreed that he was not someone to be crossed. His army had been moving south for months, and rumors said he was looking for something, or someone. Maya tried to step back, to disappear into the crowd before anyone noticed her, but her movement caught the attention of a small boy standing nearby. He pointed at her with excitement, his voice carrying clearly across the square. "Look at her! She's been digging through the trash like a wild animal!" Suddenly, every eye in the crowd turned toward Maya. She felt her face burn with shame as people began to whisper and point. Her torn dress, her dirty hands, her tangled hair, all marked her as one of the forgotten ones, the war orphans who survived on scraps and charity. The war chief's gaze found her through the crowd, and Maya felt as if the ground might swallow her whole. Those dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her want to run, but her feet seemed frozen to the cobblestones. The crowd parted between them, creating a clear path that felt like a chasm she could never cross. Cale took a step forward, then another, his boots echoing in the sudden silence that had fallen over the square. Maya's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She clutched the bread in her pocket, wondering if this would be her last meal, if the war chief would punish her for some unknown crime. When he stopped just a few feet away from her, Maya could smell leather and steel mixed with something else she couldn't identify. His presence was overwhelming, like standing too close to a fire that could either warm you or burn you alive. "What is your name?" His voice was deep and rough but not unkind. Maya opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She swallowed hard and tried again, her voice barely a whisper. "Maya." The war chief nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. The crowd pressed closer, eager to witness whatever would happen next, but Cale seemed unaware of anyone else in the square. "How long have you been living like this, Maya?" The question surprised her. She had expected anger, or disgust, or perhaps orders for her to be removed from his sight. Instead, There was something in his voice that sounded almost like concern. 3 years, she managed to say, her voice growing slightly stronger. Cale's expression darkened, and for a moment Maya thought she had said something wrong, but then she realized his anger wasn't directed at her. His jaw tightened as he looked around the square, taking in the other scavengers and beggars who had emerged from their hiding places to watch the spectacle. 3 years, he repeated, and there was something dangerous in his tone that made several people in the crowd step backward. Maya didn't understand what was happening. She had heard stories about the Warchief, about his conquests and his fierce warriors, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. He seemed to be studying her, looking for something she couldn't imagine. The silence stretched on, until Maya thought she might collapse from the tension. Then, without warning, Cale reached into a leather pouch at his belt and pulled out something that made the entire crowd gasp. It was a pendant, made of silver and shaped like a wolf's head, with eyes of deep blue stone that seemed to glow in the morning light. Maya had never seen anything so beautiful. The craftsmanship was incredible, with every detail of the wolf's fur carved with perfect precision. But more than its beauty, there was something about the pendant that called to her, as if it had been waiting for her to find it. Cale held the pendant up so everyone could see it clearly. His voice carried across the square as he spoke, and Maya realized that this moment would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it. For 3 years I have searched every village, every town, every city in this land. I have been looking for someone who carries the mark of the ancient bloodline, someone who can unite the scattered clans and bring peace to our war-torn world. Maya's mind raced as she tried to understand what he meant. Ancient bloodline? She was nobody, just an orphan who survived by eating scraps from trash barrels. How could she be part of anything ancient or important? But Cale continued speaking, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her feel as if he could see into her very soul. A pendant chooses its bearer. It has remained cold and lifeless in my possession, waiting for the right person to awaken its power. But now, he stepped closer to Maya, so close that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. The pendant in his hand began to glow more brightly, and Maya felt a strange warmth spreading through her chest. Now it calls to you, Maya. It recognizes something in you that even you don't yet understand. The crowd erupted in excited whispers, but Maya barely heard them. All she could focus on was the pendant and the way it seemed to pulse with life in Cale's hand. She wanted to reach out and touch it, but she was afraid of what might happen if she did. Cale seemed to sense her hesitation. His voice became gentler, almost coaxing. Don't be afraid. This is your destiny, Maya. You were never meant to search through trash for survival. You were meant for something far greater. Maya looked around at the faces in the crowd, some filled with wonder, others with envy or disbelief. She thought about her parents, about the life they had planned for her before the war changed everything. Would they want her to take this chance, to step into an unknown future with a man she had only just met? The bread in her pocket felt heavy, a reminder of the desperate life she had been living. But as she looked at Cale and the glowing pendant, she realized that maybe, just maybe, her days of searching through trash barrels were about to end. The Warchief extended his hand toward her, the pendant resting on his palm. The choice was hers to make, and Maya knew that whatever she decided in this moment would change the course of her life forever. Maya's hand trembled as she reached toward the pendant. The moment her fingers touched the silver wolf's head, the world around her exploded with light and sound. The pendant grew warm against her palm, and suddenly she could hear whispers in a language she didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. Images flashed through her mind like lightning, showing her scenes of ancient battles, great halls filled with warriors, and wolves running beneath starlit skies. The crowd gasped as the pendant's glow spread up Maya's arm, surrounding her in a soft blue light that made her torn dress look like royal robes. She felt power flowing through her veins, awakening something that had been sleeping deep inside her soul. For the first time in 3 years, Maya felt truly alive. Cale's eyes widened with something that looked like relief mixed with amazement. He had found what he had been searching for. But even he seemed surprised by the strength of the pendant's reaction to Maya. "It is true," he said, his voice carrying across the silent square. "The bloodline lives. A prophecy will be fulfilled." Maya wanted to ask what prophecy he meant, but before she could speak, the world around them began to change. The morning sky darkened as storm clouds gathered with unnatural speed. Thunder rolled across the heavens, and the ground beneath their feet trembled with each rumble. From the shadows between buildings, figures began to emerge. They moved like liquid darkness, their forms shifting and changing as they crept closer to the square. The crowd screamed and scattered, running in all directions as the shadow creatures surrounded them. Kale drew his sword with fluid grace, the blade singing as it cut through the air. The metal gleamed with its own inner light, reflecting the glow that still surrounded Maya. "Stay close to me," he commanded, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "The Shadowkin have found us. They want the pendant, and they will kill anyone who stands in their way." Maya had heard whispers of the Shadowkin during her years on the streets. They were servants of the Dark Lord who ruled the Eastern Kingdoms, creatures that fed on fear and despair. Most people believed they were just stories told to frighten children. But now Maya saw the terrible truth. The nearest shadow creature lunged toward them, its form solidifying into something resembling a wolf made of living darkness. Kale's sword met it in midair, and the creature dissolved with a shriek that made Maya's ears ring. But more were coming, dozens of them, pouring into the square like oil spreading across water. "We need to get out of here," Kale said, grabbing Maya's free hand. "Can you run?" Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure her shaking legs would carry her. The pendant continued to pulse with warmth in her other hand, and she noticed that wherever its light touched the ground, the shadow creatures seemed to hesitate. They ran through the twisting streets of the marketplace, Kale cutting down any shadowkin that got too close while Maya focused on keeping the pendant's light burning bright. Behind them, she could hear the sounds of destruction as the creatures tore through the market stalls, searching for their trail. As they reached the edge of town, Maya saw something that made her heart soar with hope. A group of warriors on horseback waited at the tree line, their armor gleaming in the strange light that surrounded the pendant. These were Kale's men, she realized, the legendary northern warriors who had never lost a battle. The leader of the group rode forward as they approached. He was a massive man with braided hair and a beard the color of flame. Scars covered his arms and face, each one a testament to battles fought and won. "Warchief," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "We saw the light and came as quickly as we could. Are these the Shadowkin we were warned about?" Kale helped Maya onto his own horse before mounting behind her. The warmth of his presence was reassuring after the terror of their escape. "Yes, Bjarn. The Dark Lord knows we have found her. He will send everything he has to stop us from reaching the sacred mountain." Maya twisted in the saddle to look at Kale. "Sacred mountain? What are you talking about? I don't understand any of this." Kale's arms tightened around her as he guided the horse into the forest. The other warriors formed a protective circle around them, their eyes scanning the shadows between the trees. "There is much you need to learn, Maya. The pendant you carry is one of 3 artifacts created by the ancient wolf clans thousands of years ago. When all 3 are brought together at the sacred mountain, they will awaken a power great enough to banish the darkness from our land forever." Maya looked down at the pendant, which continued to glow softly in her hand. It was hard to believe that something so small could be so important. "But why me? I'm nobody special. I'm just an orphan who has been living on the streets." "You are far from nobody," Kale replied. "The pendant would not have chosen you if you were not worthy. Your bloodline carries the essence of the first wolf lords, the ones who made the original pact with the spirits of the mountain. That power has been sleeping in your veins, waiting for the right moment to awaken." They rode in silence for a while, the forest growing thicker around them. Maya could hear the distant howls of the Shadowkin behind them, still searching for their trail. The pendant's light seemed to create a barrier around their group, keeping the darkness at bay. As the day wore on, Maya learned more about the man who had chosen her from the trash barrel. Kale told her about his childhood in the Northern Territories, where he had been raised by his grandfather after his parents died in one of the first battles against the Dark Lord. He had spent years training with the greatest warriors of his clan, learning not just how to fight, but how to lead and inspire others. "I was given the second pendant when I became Warchief," he explained, pulling a chain from beneath his leather armor. Maya saw another wolf's head, this one carved from black stone with eyes of deep red. "It has guided me for 10 years, showing me visions of the one who would carry the third pendant. I saw your face in those visions long before I ever came to the marketplace." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You mean you knew you would find me there?" "I knew I would find you when the time was right. The pendant led me to that place, on that day, at that moment. Nothing about our meeting was accidental. They stopped to rest as the sun began to set, taking shelter in a small clearing beside a stream. The warriors set up a perimeter while Kale built a fire. Maya sat beside the flames, staring at the pendant and trying to understand everything that had happened to her. Bjorn approached and sat down across from her, his massive frame making the ground shake slightly. Despite his intimidating appearance, his eyes were kind. "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" he said, "learning that your entire life has been leading to this moment." Maya nodded, unable to trust her voice. The reality of her situation was finally beginning to sink in. This morning she had been a starving orphan, and now she was apparently destined to help save the world. "I was there when Kale received his pendant," Bjorn continued. "I watched him struggle with the same feelings you're experiencing now. The weight of destiny is not easy to bear." "How do you know I won't fail?" Maya asked. "How do you know I'm strong enough for whatever is coming?" Bjorn smiled, and his weathered face transformed completely. "Because the pendant chose you, little wolf. It sees strength that even you don't know you possess. Trust in that and trust in us. We will help you discover what you're truly capable of." That night, Maya dreamed of wolves. She saw them running across vast plains beneath a full moon, their eyes glowing with the same light as her pendant. In her dream, she ran with them, her feet barely touching the ground as they raced toward a distant mountain peak. When she woke, she found Kale sitting beside the dying fire, keeping watch. The pendant around her neck pulsed gently with her heartbeat, and she realized it had become a part of her in ways she was only beginning to understand. "We reach the sacred mountain tomorrow," Kale said quietly. "Are you ready?" Maya looked up at the stars, thinking about her parents and the life she had lost. Then she thought about the life that was waiting for her, full of challenges and dangers she couldn't yet imagine. "I think so," she whispered. "I have to be." As dawn broke over the forest, Maya felt the pendant grow warm against her chest. Somewhere ahead lay the sacred mountain and the third pendant that would complete the ancient trilogy. Behind them, the forces of darkness gathered for a final assault. The real test was about to begin. The sacred mountain rose before them like a sleeping giant, its peak shrouded in mist that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Maya felt the pendant around her neck grow warmer with each step their horses took up the winding path. The ancient stones beneath them hummed with power, as if the mountain itself was awakening after a long sleep. Kale rode beside her, his own pendant pulsing in rhythm with hers. The connection between them had grown stronger during their journey, and Maya could sometimes feel his thoughts as if they were her own. Behind them, Bjorn and the other warriors maintained their vigilant watch, but Maya knew they were all feeling the weight of what lay ahead. As they reached a plateau halfway up the mountain, Kale called for a halt. In the center of the flat space stood an ancient altar made of white stone, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change as Maya looked at them. The air around the altar shimmered like heat waves, and she could hear whispers in that same unknown language she had heard when she first touched the pendant. "This is the place," Kale said, dismounting and helping Maya down from her horse. "The final pendant waits within the altar, but retrieving it will not be easy." As if summoned by his words, the mist around them began to thicken and darken. Shadow creatures emerged from the swirling grey, but these were different from the ones in the marketplace. These shadowkin were larger, more solid, with glowing red eyes that burned like coals in the darkness. "The guardian of the altar," Bjorn called out, raising his massive warhammer. "We knew this would happen." From the heart of the mist stepped a figure that made Maya's blood freeze. It was the Dark Lord himself, his form wreathed in shadow and flame. He was tall and terrible, with a face like sculpted darkness and eyes that held the depths of endless night. When he spoke, his voice echoed from the very stones of the mountain. "So, the wolf children have come to claim their birthright. How touching. But you are too late. The third pendant belongs to me now, and with it, I will rule both light and darkness." Maya felt fear trying to overwhelm her, but the pendant's warmth gave her courage. She stepped forward, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "The pendants were never meant for you. They were created to protect this world, not destroy it." The Dark Lord laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "What would a street rat know of ancient purposes? You spent your days digging through garbage while I built an empire. You are nothing." The words hit Maya like physical blows. awakening all her old insecurities. For a moment, she felt like that frightened girl in the marketplace again, ashamed of her torn dress and dirty hands. But then she felt Kael's hand on her shoulder and heard Bjorn's voice calling out encouragement. "You are not nothing, Maya," Kael said firmly. "You are the chosen one. You are the light that will banish this darkness." Maya closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, feeling for the power that the pendant had awakened. She thought of her parents, of their love and sacrifice. She thought of all the people suffering under the Dark Lord's rule, living in fear as she had lived in hunger. Most importantly, she thought of the choice she had made in the marketplace, to reach for something better than the life she had known. When she opened her eyes, they blazed with silver light. The pendant around her neck erupted in brilliance, and for the first time, Maya felt the full extent of her power. She was not just carrying the pendant, she was becoming one with it, channeling the ancient magic of the wolf lords who had come before her. Kael and his warriors fought the shadow creatures while Maya faced the Dark Lord himself. Their powers clashed in waves of light and darkness, each strike sending tremors through the stone beneath their feet. Maya discovered abilities she never knew she possessed. She could move with impossible speed, her body flowing like liquid light around the Dark Lord's attacks. Her hands became weapons of pure energy, each touch burning away patches of his shadowy form. But he was ancient and cunning, with thousands of years of experience in battle. "You think you can defeat me, child?" the Dark Lord snarled as they circled each other near the altar. "I have consumed entire kingdoms. I have turned heroes into shadows, and hope into despair. What makes you think you are different?" "Because I know what it means to lose everything," Maya replied, dodging a blast of dark energy that left a smoking crater in the stone. "And I know what it means to choose hope when all seems lost." She thought of all the nights she had slept in doorways, all the days she had gone without food, all the moments when giving up would have been easier than continuing to fight for survival. That same determination filled her now, magnified by the pendant's power until it blazed like a star. The Dark Lord's next attack was his strongest yet, a wave of pure shadow that should have destroyed her completely. But Maya stood firm, the pendant's light creating a barrier around her that the darkness could not penetrate. As the shadow wave crashed against her shield, something unexpected happened. The light began to spread, not just from Maya but from the altar behind her. The third pendant was responding to her power, calling out from its ancient resting place. Maya felt its presence like a missing piece of her soul finally returning home. With a cry that echoed across the mountain, Maya plunged her hand into the altar. The stone dissolved like water around her fingers, and she grasped the third pendant, a wolf's head carved from crystal that blazed with pure white light. The moment all three pendants were in proximity, the world transformed. Light erupted from Maya's position, spreading outward in waves that washed over the entire mountain and beyond. The shadow creatures screamed as the light touched them, their forms dissolving like smoke in a strong wind. The Dark Lord himself staggered backward, his solid form beginning to waver. For the first time in their battle, Maya saw fear in his burning eyes. "This is not possible," he gasped. "The ancient pact was broken." "The Wolf Lords are gone." "The Wolf Lords never left," Maya said, feeling the presence of ancient spirits surrounding her. They were waiting, sleeping in the blood of their descendants, ready to return when the world needed them most. She held up the three pendants, and they rose from her hands to orbit around her like tiny suns. The power flowing through her was beyond anything she had ever imagined, but it didn't feel foreign or overwhelming. It felt like coming home. The Dark Lord made one final desperate attack, pouring everything he had into a spear of concentrated darkness. But the combined light of the three pendants met his assault head-on, and there was no contest. The light consumed the darkness, unraveling thousands of years of evil in a single moment. When the brilliance faded, the Dark Lord was gone, leaving only a small pile of ash that the mountain wind quickly scattered. The shadow creatures had vanished as well, and for the first time in years, the air was free of their oppressive presence. Maya sank to her knees, exhausted but victorious. The three pendants settled gently into her hands, their light now warm and steady rather than blazing. She looked up to see Kael and his warriors standing around her, their faces filled with awe and joy. "It is finished," Kael said, kneeling beside her. "The darkness has been banished. Peace will return to the land." Maya smiled, thinking of all the children who would never have to dig through trash barrels for food. all the families who would never have to live in fear. The girl who had been nothing more than a street orphan had become the savior of her world. In the months that followed, Maya worked with Kale to rebuild the kingdoms that had been ravaged by war. She used her connection to the pendants to heal the land itself, calling forth new growth from soil that had been poisoned by shadow magic. Towns and cities flourished under her guidance, and the people began to remember what it felt like to live without fear. Maya never forgot her humble beginnings. She established homes for orphans in every major city, ensuring that no child would have to survive on scraps and charity as she had. She visited the marketplaces regularly, not as a queen or a legend, but as someone who understood what it meant to be forgotten by the world. Sometimes, late at night, she would take out the 3 pendants and remember that moment in the marketplace when Kale had first extended his hand to her. She had been given a choice between the life she knew and a destiny she couldn't imagine. Every day, she was grateful that she had found the courage to reach for something better. The Wolf Lords had chosen well. The girl who had searched trash barrels for food had become the light that saved the world, proving that heroes could come from the most unlikely places. And, in a kingdom finally at peace, children no longer went hungry while their guardian watched over them, the pendants pulsing gently with the heartbeat of hope itself.